All right, welcome back to Double Fries No Slaw. Clay Fink on with us. Clay did some film review for us earlier in the year, and then the season was just so terrible that there was nothing. At that point, there was nothing. We were doing an evaluation, a thorough evaluation on our film review for this program, and our evaluation ended up much like the Noel Cast and other podcasts that just said, "Hey, if Florida State doesn't care, we don't care." But they did make two hires today, or it seems like they're making two hires. I don't know if ink is dry. Florida State, I don't think, has announced either of them, but they hire a running backs coach and a DB, probably cornerbacks coach, to the staff. Before we talk about those guys, thoughts on the departures of both Pat Surtain and David Johnson, who took maybe what's a lateral role, probably a little bit of a step down role. I know that it's the SEC. Yeah. But just thoughts on both those departures, and then we'll talk about Florida State's new hires.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with David Yak Johnson. I do think that's probably a little bit of a downgrade, and I think he might have seen some writing on the wall, and maybe that's a bit of wishful thinking at this point, because maybe there was no writing on the wall, considering we're, approaching a week since Pat Surtain has been fired, and no other firings have been made. So we'll see, but ultimately, I do wonder if it was time to move on with Yak at running backs coach. I question the rotations that he's used in these last 2 years. Even just going back to last year, Keziah Holmes, who might have been the most natural runner in that room, dropped a pass in the flat against Memphis, and I don't think we saw Keziah Holmes touch the field again until the FCS game in their second to last game of the year. And this year with Chroma, who's obviously one of the higher paid players on your roster, just not getting touches. Yeah, I've vocalized that on Twitter, but it's frustrating, and I do think he's a good developer. I think he's a fine recruiter, which is kind of standard for this staff, as we've discussed ad nauseum. But I think that's a fine. We're good with that. We're good with letting Yak go. I think that's a good fit for him. I think that's probably the level he should be at. I don't think he's a group of 6 coach or group of 5, whatever. But I do think Arkansas is probably a step below FSU, but I think he's going to fit in well there. And I also enjoyed seeing Rodney Hill, who's had some ups and downs with the NIL stuff throughout his career. I saw he was pretty excited when the report came out that Yak might be their new running backs coach at Arkansas. So that was cool to see for sure. But yeah, I think if he hadn't left, I would have preferred for FSU to move on from him. Yeah. But I don't think he would be priority number one. And I think we're going to talk about another guy who they actually did fire. And yeah.
That one came out of left field. I mean, listen, we name names. A lot of people expect JP to either go or have been gone. A lot of people think that Tony Tokar should be here or not be here, one way or the other. People have thoughts about both coordinators, good, bad, or indifferent. But for Pat to be the first one and really only one to be let go, like my gut is that JP probably is looking for a job elsewhere. The news came out that their GM Ray was looking for a job elsewhere, maybe UCLA. Wouldn't surprise me at all if, Tokar's is a similar route, and they, also wouldn't surprise me if Mike brought anybody back, because that's just kind of where we are. But for Pat to be the only one like truly fired, I don't think, I've talked about this on here, so I won't go super deep into my thoughts. I don't think Pat is like elite at any one thing, but I think he's above average at most things, and certainly not the guy whose head I would have thought was on a chopping block right away.
Well, yeah, and ultimately, I think it kind of lands somewhere in between what they ended up doing and what fans believe they should have done. The common fan perception is that Pat Surtain is kind of an elite coach. I think a lot of fans feel that way, and I think he's a good coach. I think he wants to go to the NFL. That was the understanding we had last year when I was, getting a little bit more insight, but I was totally stunned when he ended up returning to Florida State this year. And I think that kind of shows up, you lose a corner top 500, 600 recruit at corner in blanking Sean Johnson to Maryland just a few days before signing day. And that was a guy like I really liked him. I really liked him as a corner prospect. And I just question how committed a guy who he's made so much money in his life. His son is about to make and is already making so much money in his life. Why are you wasting your time just doing all this little minutia recruiting at this level? And so that's why I was so stunned when he came back this year. And really, when I saw that they parted ways, my first instinct was Mike Norvell wants to. I thought it was a publicity move or like a PR move. I thought it was Surtain had indicated he's going to leave. So we're going to just go ahead and get out in front of it. We're going to fire him. And maybe that was the case, but then I saw the Surtain tweet, uh, you know, about him being fired. And I feel like it just looks worse every day that passes, to be honest, because I think there's certainly a case that you should have and could have moved on from Pat Surtain, but and I don't have an issue with who's the first firing, whatever. But now we're approaching a week since then, and you haven't fired anybody else.
Yeah.
So is he your worst coach by a wide margin? No, he's not even remotely close. He's probably your second best coach, if I'm being completely honest, and that says a lot about this coaching staff. But it's just mind-boggling to me, to be honest. And at this point, I wonder, are there going to be changes that come with outside of guys leaving, like David Johnson leaving as the running backs coach or D-Ray leaving as the GM? And are there going to be any more firings? Because I would think they would have come at some point in this week, like maybe in the next 2 days. But it's so baffling to me. I don't understand what the strategy is right now. We'll see.
I don't think Florida State has a real strategy. I will tell you, like, it surprised me that it was Pat first and Pat maybe only. Pat and Mike are not buddies. And a lot of these guys that we're talking about that they need to move on from, Mike is buddies with. We talk about JP. We talk about others, on the staff, Tony.
Cars, yeah.
Yeah, and I do think there's a trend in coaching that you don't want to fire your buddy. You want to help them look for another job and find something. That's why the David Johnson news leaked a couple of days ago, the same day as the Pat thing, actually. That's why the D-Ray news came out today. I don't think they want to disgracefully fire their buddies, which I get that. I totally understand that. That is not uncommon, and that's not just a Mike thing. Oh, he's being too nice of a guy. No, everybody does that. Jimbo wouldn't fire his guys back in the day either because they were buddies, right? They all went fishing and hunting together, and I get that. So Pat and him, I don't think we're buddies, right? Pat was not on the original staff. No. He brought him in. I think it was more of like, hey, you're here to do a job. I'm your boss. The only problem I have, and I don't mean to grill Mike on every single thing, but at the end of the day, that's what we do a lot around here, I guess, is
7 games in the last 2 years.
Yeah. Like, it's not uncommon to not want to fire your buddies. It's also not uncommon for you to understand the sense of urgency that exists around this program right now. Or maybe there is no sense of urgency. Maybe Mike's already been told, dude, you're good for 2026. Just don't go 3-9 and we'll bring you back. So maybe there isn't a sense of urgency. I'm not trying to read too much into it, but I understand not firing your friends. I also understand, dude, your butt is on the line right now, or at least that is the perception, right? Like Florida State goes 6-6 again next year. We would all think, well, maybe this will be the year they do it. But that's where I think there would be a little more urgency. I would think there are more staff changes, but it is concerning. It's concerning that we're a weekend. Last year, like, what was it? The day after or the day of the, no. Last year, like, Atkins and them were fired before the season was even over. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and I understand 2-10 is different than 5-7. Not much when you consider there was an extra FCS opponent and other things in the schedule. But 2-2, 2-10 is a little different. I get it. But last year we fired guys in season, and this year not so much the case. So, all right, Florida State does make 2 hires though. Let's go DB first, because that is the one I think people are maybe a little bit more interested in, because they were, whether right or wrong, a little bit more emotionally invested in thinking that Pat was, again, the best or second best coach on the staff. Thoughts on Coach Harris's brother coming in here at the DB coach.
Yeah, I think I kind of like I know I posted about him a few days ago. I kind of lucked into that. I just my strategy was let me go to PFF. I'm going to look at the top coverage grades in the FBS this year, and any team that's in the Southeast, and I'm going to look at their coaching staff and I'm going to see do they have a young ascending coach or somebody with Southeast roots, something like that. And UCF ended up, I've looked now, had their highest coverage grade in the last 12 years in the PFF database this year. And when I saw that, I looked up their coaching staff and I said, Harris, interesting. I clicked on it. It's the brother of the current Florida State wide receivers coach. So it makes so much sense, but I don't think we should just like dismiss it as we're doing this because he's the brother of the receivers coach or because he worked as an analyst under Mike Norvell in his first season at Florida State in 2020. I think this is an ascending star. I think, honestly, I know you've already talked about the new Florida State edge coach, but I think the two of them, I think you could make a case that pound for pound, considering their age, I think you could make an argument that these are the two best position coach hires under Mike Norvell. Will it matter? Is there gonna be enough time for it to matter? Right. That's a whole other discussion. But man, like I've not been sunshine pumping these last few years, but I'm really excited about this one. I think he's on a very bright trajectory. 35 years old. He's already had experience at Florida State, Florida International, Florida Atlantic, and UCF. And he played at Miami, second round pick, 6-year NFL player. I don't know, man. I just think this is a rising star. He was co-defensive coordinator when he was at FAU. I'm really, really, really excited about this hire. I didn't think I would be more excited about any hire than Nick Williams' edge, but man, like the more I've looked into Brandon Harris, I think I really like both of these guys. Yeah, it's these two and Herpan for me as far as the top Mike Norvell hires so far.
So this was my take after the edge thing. So not to rehash this, but I don't know if you watched the video or not, but I'll give you my quick one, not to bore the people that have maybe already watched it. My thought on the edge was it just it didn't, in a good way, it didn't fit the mold of Mike just bringing in like pure developers, pure coaches, pure like old ball coaches, right? Like, which is a lot of what the staff is. Now, you just mentioned one, like, not that you can't have some of those guys. Herb Hand has been excellent at that. And that still we grade as a really good hire. And I think that hire worked out better than maybe we even expected this year, especially working with 5 brand new guys out of the portal. I know Richie came back, but still played 4 games. So all that said, I liked the mood of the Williams hire because it did feel like, hey, you're going to get a guy that can relate more with the kids, is a more relentless recruiter, has worked under Jimbo when he put together a number 1 class, worked under Kirby, worked under Fran Brown. I know that Dion's kind of a little bit different in what they do out there, but has worked under some high energy, like high level recruiting expectation type guys. And so I liked the hire from that perspective. I also like taking responsibility away from Knighton and Papuchis if he comes back at that edge position. But I liked it from that perspective. Do you think that Brandon Harris does he bring that same kind of, I know he's been at UCF and FAU, so yeah, he doesn't have 7 5-stars that he's landed or anything crazy like that. But do you think that from a recruiting perspective, I know you talked about UCF having a good PFF grade, so that speaks to the development, the coaching that happens there. From the recruiting perspective, could it even be like, I don't want to be disrespectful here, like an upgrade somewhat over Pat, who I think was an okay recruiter, but not like a high energy, like I'm going to grind it out on the trail like a Mario guy or something like that. Like I think Pat was resting a lot on who he had put in the league and his son and things like that, connections with AHS and all that. Just before we go on, I will give some love over to Tallahassee Ford. If you're in the market for a new, used, whatever kind of vehicle, make sure you hit up our friends over at Tallahassee Ford, a pillar in the community. They're always giving back to FSU. They've worked with their athletes as well. As you can see, the commercial with JT and Trey Benson Vickers in there, an older Seminole that you guys will remember from several years ago. Appreciate Tallahassee Ford for their support. That you will not get a better experience in buying a car. They can deliver it to you if you're anywhere watching this that's in the continental United States. Don't be calling them from Dublin or anything like that. Make sure that you are reaching out to Tallahassee Ford. We appreciate them for their partnership and their support, and hopefully you will have a great experience with them.
No, absolute. Like I think you honestly kind of summed it up a little bit there at the end. I think Pat kind of, as I said earlier, like I my understanding is he wanted to go pro after this past season because he just doesn't enjoy that grind of traveling and constantly communicating with these high schoolers and kids that he's not going to connect with, even though he's relatively young for a position coach. Um, Absolutely. I think this can absolutely be a massive upgrade in that area. And I know that sounds kind of hyperbolic just because Pat Surtain has a reputation in South Florida. His son, obviously, is a defensive player of the year. They have the exact same name. So even if kids don't know Pat Surtain Sr., they know his son. And there's only so many Pat Surtains in the world. But ultimately, I think just the fact that the Harris family has such deep connections in South Florida, I kind of question, is it that big of a difference? And I also question, UCF really fought in the portal this offseason in the spring window for, I forget, one of their safeties who ended up being one of their starting and one of their better safeties that Brandon Harris ended up landing in the spring portal window. And I feel like he hasn't really had a ton of chances to show his recruiting chops, working at FAU, FIU, whatever. But he had one chance, and in the spring portal window, he got a kind of, I think he might have ended up getting all Big 12 safety for UCF. But this is a 35-year-old guy. He seems energetic. He seems like a guy who is eager to recruit and go on the road and build connections with these families. And like, I know that's all cliche stuff, but like, I don't think he's the type of coach that's like gonna heavily rely on, this is my name, this is my reputation. I want to build he's gonna build a relationship with the
Yeah.
recruit and the recruit's family. And I'm just super excited about this one. And like, even outside of the recruiting, as we mentioned earlier, like the coverage unit for UCF this year was legitimately one of the best units in the Big 12, if not the entire country. So I think this is up there with Williams as one of Mike's better hires, maybe in his time at FSU.
Yeah, I'm looking up the name on that because it'll drive me crazy not to see it. But yeah, I'm a little slow on doing it. But defensive back, all right, I can't find it. I'll move on from that. Running backs coach, they hire, dude. I just had it in front of me. Cam Martin.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think he worked under Gus, but also like from
No,
UCF.
he did. He
Oh,
did.
he did. Okay,
He did, but
but he left to go to.
he did, but oh my god. The corner, who were we just discussing?
Harris.
Harris.
Harris
He
did
did
not.
not. He did
Okay.
not.
So
Forgot his
that
last name. Sorry, guys.
no, you're fine. So he did work under Gus. They bring him in to replace Yak. Overall thoughts here.
I'm pretty excited about this one. I've seen a few people dismissing it just because, I don't know, I guess maybe they
We're all
think
in a
that
bad
they,
mood.
well, definitely. But maybe they think they kind of skipped through the hiring cycle and just went with a guy that's coached under Gus previously. Um, I mean, he was with UCF in Gus's last season. I mean, he was the running backs coach over RJ Harvey.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think we all know it's a pretty good running back. Uh, Unbelievably successful in his time at UCF, third round pick. He's had success in the NFL as a rookie. I saw a stat earlier. I can't find it in front of me, but since whatever year that Martin became a position coach, he's been a running backs coach every year that he's been a position coach.
Hmm.
Every year that he's been a running backs coach, 1,000-yard rusher.
We could use
Every
one of
year.
those. We could stop if we just
We
put
haven't
our
had one.
rotations-
We
yeah,
haven't
if
had
put our
one.
rotations out of our mind. We might be able to do that. Maybe
Trey
he can
Benson
with
didn't
that.
even run for 1,000.
Yeah, when he hit 990.
Yeah.
So pretty good coach there. Again, kind of fits that mold. I mean, he's a younger guy. Think he can. I mean, and Yak was not. I don't think Yak was a terrible recruiter by any means. Obviously, I don't want to take things away from him. I think you landed Cromwell because you paid a lot of money. I don't think you're.
Yeah, you absolutely did. You
I'm
don't
not
have to.
trying to.
You did. You did.
I'm not trying to
did.
be a jerk to David Johnson. You're not out recruiting Kirby Smart for a kid out of Georgia, right? Like you pay up for that. Danzy, another really talented player, local Tallahassee kid, Cam Davis, kid that ultimately hasn't worked out, but lifelong Seminole. You did a good job on these. I'm not saying that Yak was like,
Yeah.
but I do
That
think
was like Cam was like a Yak and Norvell thing. They just everybody in the building loved Cam. They were all recruiting Cam. That wasn't.
So you would think that you might upgrade here too at your running back from a recruiting perspective. And then you probably will, especially from an effort level. Like I've talked about this before, and I don't mean to just, but like, I don't know that Yak was like wanting to, kind of like you talked about with Pat for different motivations. I don't think that he was grinding the recruiting trail is maybe the best way to say that. And maybe you'll have somebody that does again, but you might've made 3 hires here that you do get a little bit more of that recruiting effort out of it that you haven't really gotten from this staff for 7 years now.
Yeah. No, I mean, when I remember when I was more closely monitoring the activities of some of the position coaches when I was with 24/7, I remember kind of being stunned by the difference in Chris Thompson compared to every other position coach in terms of how much time they spent visiting players. And that had more to do with the fact that he had these connections in Texas with kids who don't even play tight end. But he would just, I'm just going to go watch this football game in Texas because I know coaches there and I'm going to talk to their linebacker or whatever. And I don't even think I'm sure he's far from the gold standard, but that's the best I've seen. And basically nobody else on the staff have I ever heard any like glowing reviews in terms of their effort on the trail, how much time they're committing on the trail. I hate to like judge them for that, but they are getting paid for that, It sucks that they have to miss their families and go visit high school kids, but that's what they're getting paid for. So.
Yeah, paid and paid well. And again, we've called that out. It is Florida State, and the logo does a good job of recruiting itself. And they've had top 20 classes 2 years in a row with losing seasons. And that's about, I think that's about as bad as you can do. Like we talk about Mike being a bad recruiter, and I don't know if he's bad or just doesn't require enough of his staff, maybe a little bit of both. But like I think you or I could recruit a top 20 class at Florida State because it's Florida State. Florida went 4-8 this year and they have a top 15 class. Again, there are some places that are just going to recruit themselves and kids want to go to FSU and they have decent NIL funds and things like that. So, but just having guys that actually feel like they care about recruiting. Now, again, we may get on here in 9 months or 12 months and say, yeah, well, those guys sucked. Everything we thought wasn't the case. But just like a minimal amount of effort feels like it'll be a nice change from where this staff has been. It'd be nice to have some accountability too. I don't think Mike has held this staff to much accountability when it comes to recruiting. And that just kind of has been what it is. But again, maybe the ultimate positive that you can put on any of this is that it does seem like his mindset about it is changing some. And in the statement that we got from Alfred and Collins and McCullough was, they talked about wanting to bring in talent and wanting to make sure that our recruiting efforts were matching up with where the program was. And so, again, the ultimate positive spin I can give, which again, I've been pretty down too, and I'm not trying to crap on these hires by any means, is that it does seem like it's trending more towards, yeah, we need to get out and get players in here. And hopefully some of that'll help.
Yeah. The only thing I want to add real quick before, I don't know if we have anything else to add, but I want to give a quick shout out / prediction. I think that UCF running back, true freshman running back Tavion Swint out of Kissimmee Osceola High School, Kissimmee, Florida. He was a 4-star recruit in last year's class. Honestly, relatively heavily recruited by Florida State. Ended up being primarily recruited by new Florida State running backs coach Cam Martin. I predict, if I were to give an unofficial crystal ball right now, I would assume that with the departure of scat back Jalen Lucas today, that's a role that is always featured in a Gus Malzahn offense. This guy is the exact same player. He got recruited by Florida State's new running backs coach, who's now, leaving UCF, or leaving Tulsa after coming from UCF. I think this is a guy who we might end up seeing for Florida State next year, Tavion Swint, and yeah, that's.
I don't know if so there's I think Crystal Ball might be trademarked, so we'll just say Crystal Nugget.
Crystal Nugget.
So that we don't get sued. But do you have any big picture thoughts? I'll ask you this and get out of here. Big picture thoughts on Gus staying or going? Not necessarily like what he'll do. If you want to give a prediction on that, that's fine. Another nugget. But do you have any thoughts on, is it a good thing if he stays for continuity? Does it mean Tommy's coming back? Is it a bad thing if he stays? Would you like to see a change? Just big picture there.
Honestly, like, I had some opinions on it initially, but the more that I've thought about it, like, I don't really care, man. Like, I don't really care, man. Like, I like Cade Bell. I'm just kind of saying things that the OTB guys have said. They talked about Cade Bell and out of Pitt, the Pitt offensive coordinator, but I think he's a good play caller. But ultimately, it's a matter of when,
Yeah.
like when is this all going to be? I hate to just like, I don't know, man. Like, do you really want to spend money to buy out Gus? Unless he somehow accepts a job somewhere else, which things are closing up fast. I kind of thought the UAB thing might have been in play, but at this point, I just think it would probably be worthless to pay up to get rid of Gus, and you're going to get another year where you're going to end up putting good numbers up. He's always going to stat pad, as the Auburn fans tried to tell all of the FSU fans, and Auburn and UCF fans tried to tell us. He's going to stat pad in those group of 5 and FCS games. And I don't know, man, he's going to fall apart in the big games. So it is what it is. You probably shouldn't pay up to get rid of Gus, but I'm honestly more surprised that Tony's still around, to be honest. I kind of had the vibe that he might have had one foot out the door over those last 4 or 5 games, but at this point, it kind of looks like he's going to be back next year.
Yeah, it feels like, excuse me, it's such a depressing sentiment, because you are right. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter for the big picture. And so is it better to just, I don't think there's an offensive. You talked about Bell. I mean, if he was able to bring a quarterback, obviously that'd be a big deal. You're probably talking about a team that has another tough decision at the end of the year next year, unless things really kind of miraculously shift. So why spend the money? Just take your lumps and go, which is an awfully depressing sentiment. So, Clay, I know you break a lot of stuff down on Twitter, X, whatever. Where can people follow you? Where can they find more of what you're doing?
Yeah, over at Clay _ Fink on Twitter or X, and then I would like to, now that I'm done with finals, get back into some of the transfer portal reporting over on Group Chat Sports over on YouTube. We're doing kind of some national reporting for college football, maybe even some college basketball, head coaches, recruiting, transfer portal, anything that you might send in your group chat is breaking news.
Cool. We'll have to steal you some too. We can do some recruiting
Definitely.
and transfer stuff. This is Florida State specific here, and so make sure that you are subscribed. Clay, thanks for hanging out, bud.
Absolutely. Love being here.
As we wrap up, just a quick reminder that all of our content is brought to you by Sleeper. Appreciate Sleeper for their support. Go check them out on the Sleeper app. Use our code DFNS when you do.